So here I just see a typo. I just put summary twice, so I have to translate this morning. So sorry for that. I would like to start by explaining some basics concepts such as fiscal, what fiscal means in economics. I'm sorry, I didn't know that I have so many scholars here today, but let me start with that. Let me start by saying that fiscal has to do with government revenues and government expenditures. So that's what you're going to find at the end of the day in the fiscal plan. What the government is going to do with the revenues that they get from the economy. Why do we have to discuss a fiscal plan in Puerto Rico? This is new. This is a mandate from Promesa. Promesa in Spanish means promise. So Promesa is the law that mandates the fiscal plan. Promesa is a Puerto Rico Oversight Management, Economic and Stability Act. So Promesa creates several things. One of the things is that it gave access to Puerto Rico to bankruptcy. Puerto Rico didn't have access to a bankruptcy code. Puerto Rico government was in that sense in a sort of a limbo, a legal limbo. So Democrats in Congress asked for access to bankruptcy, and Republicans in Congress say, well, we need to have a fiscal control board in Puerto Rico. As part of that fiscal control board, and I have to jump to the fifth point here. We call it in Puerto Rico Fiscal Control Board because it has veto power. When we compare oversight board that have been implemented in the US, in many cities in the US, difference between control board and oversight board is that oversight board doesn't have veto power over the local government. But the board that we have in Puerto Rico have veto power, and actually they can impose their own fiscal plan and their own government budget for Puerto Rico. And that has happened many times, that local government prepare a fiscal plan and the local government prepare a government budget, when the fiscal control board say, you know what, that is not going to apply. I'm going to impose my plan. When that has happened in the US, they call it a fiscal control board, but in the case of Puerto Rico, you have a board that have that power, but they call it the oversight board. And that's some of the differences. The fiscal plan is indisputable in court. So bondholders or lenders or communities, they cannot go to the court and say, I want that fiscal plan to be changed. What this fiscal control board writes in that plan is indisputable. And it's also the basis for debt restructuring. In that plan, in my opinion, one of the most important part of the plan is the exhibit that outlines the debt capacity of Puerto Rico. At the end, they say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and at the end of the day, this is what the government of Puerto Rico is able to pay. It is interesting that Republicans say in Congress, we need to have a fiscal control board because the local treasury, they don't know how to plan, their forecastings are always wrong, and we need to make sure that we have a good fiscal plan that is actually accurate. It's not like the one that the local government is doing. As a matter of fact, they have made 11 fiscal plans in just 3 years. If we count draft and the certified plans, we're gonna be in a number of 11 fiscal plan in just three years, or 4 every year, an average of almost 4 in every year. So what are the differences? The presentation I gave last month that Ivis was referring to, I was discussing the fiscal plan of the local government. And the local government, the department that we call it here AFAF, which is the Department of the Government of Puerto Rico that is that deals with the fiscal issues of Puerto Rico, they're predicting an economic downturn in fiscal year 2020. In Puerto Rico, fiscal year starts in July 1st and ends in June 30. So the fiscal year that just ended 2 days ago, they say that the economic downturn will be about negative 3.6%. The Fiscal Control Board, in their plan that was certified about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they say no, the economy will be decreasing by negative 4%. So it's not a big difference in the case of the fiscal year 2020. Now, there is a huge difference for the forecasting of the next fiscal year, the fiscal year that just started 2 days ago. Local government is saying the economy is going to decline 7.6%, which will be the largest economic downturn since 1950, which is actually the first year that Puerto Rico record macroeconomic data. So if we look at all the published data on all the macroeconomic published data in Puerto Rico, local government is saying the next year is going to be the worst ever. On the other hand, the Fiscal Control Board is saying, no, that's wrong. Next fiscal year, the economy is not going to decline by 7.6%. Actually, the economy is going to grow next year by 0.5% or about 500 million. And that's a huge difference, because if you say that the economy is growing, then tax revenues are going to increase, and if tax revenues increase, you have more money to pay debt. As always, there are some positive side and some negative sides attached to this plan. In the positive side, I will say that the plan finally admits that austerity, which is not efficiency, you can cut budget as much as you want and continue with inefficiency. That's two different things. And also you can have the same budget, but with a higher efficiency. But for some reason, some people, especially in the media, confuse austerity with efficiency. The plan admits that austerity reduces economic growth, and that's in particular, that is in Exhibit 11. They say, yes, we're going to cut the government budget in these areas, and that is going to cause a decline in economic growth. The bad news is that, yes, they say austerity is bad, but they don't reverse it. They just postpone some cuts, especially to the public university, which has received the largest cuts. When you look at all the departments of the government of Puerto Rico, the public university received the largest cut. So next year, they're saying to the University of Puerto Rico, I'm not going to cut your budget next year, but wait until fiscal year 2022 for that. The plan, the second positive point, in my opinion, is that the plan establishes that current debt agreements will lead to fiscal deficits. So they're saying if we continue with the debt agreements that we have in the past, COVID-19 has changed so much the economic environment in the island that if we continue with that debt agreements, we're going to have fiscal deficits. If we have more fiscal deficit, it also means that we're going to have more time with the Fiscal Control Board in the island. PROMESA states that we can get rid of the Fiscal Control Board once we have at least 4 years without fiscal deficits. The third positive point is that the plan limits tax credits. In the past, they didn't want to touch or even mention tax credits. In Puerto Rico, there are billions of dollars that are given every year for different corporations and individuals. Some of them are good tax credits, others are just not. Carrion, which is before quitting, he actually quit yesterday. He is the president of the Fiscal Control Board, He said that after COVID-19, Puerto Rico does not have the same debt capacity as before. He said that 2 weeks after the lockdown in March of 2020. So that is not in the plan, but is implicit in that exhibit when they said that the current debt agreement is going to lead to fiscal deficits. So in the negative side, that's a big package. First of all, there is no clear social or economic policy. They say that there is a stimulus package, but the big thing of that stimulus package is bonuses for public servants. Public servants that were earning their salaries under the lockdown because they were in hospital or they were in police station. So if you give bonus to someone that is currently employed, probably that money they're going to use it for what we call in economics conspicuous consumption, or buying things that you actually don't need that much. Maybe you buy a pool, you buy a big TV, and that is not the kind of stimulus that the economy of Puerto Rico needs, because if you take that money to buy, to consume in Walmart, for instance, and you buy a big TV that is imported because we don't produce TVs in Puerto Rico, that money is going out of the jurisdiction of Puerto Rico and have a low multiplier effect in the economy. The second negative side is that the plan still supposes or assumes that structural, which are actually market reforms, will grow our economy. Structural, they call it structural. For me, are market reforms such as labor reform, permit reforms. They're saying that if we do a second labor reform, there was a labor reform in 2017, but they say if we do an even bigger labor reform, the economy is going to grow by about 500 million every year. I should say that the gross national product of Puerto Rico are 70 billion. So this is not the economy of the US. So 500 million is not that small as in the US. It's not a small figure. The third negative point is that the plan also assumes that we're going to have the best of the best hurricane reconstruction. I said that the economy of Puerto Rico is 70 billion. They're saying that the reconstruction, the investment in reconstruction will be 82 billion. You might ask, Jose, what doesn't have to be, what's the relationship between reconstruction and the fiscal plan? Well, if you assume that we're going to have a fabulous big reconstruction, you are going to overestimate tax revenues. Why? Well, take the case of a contractor that is going to renovate a house that was destroyed by Hurricane Maria. That contractor will have to pay more money to the local treasury because they're having more work. Also, when that contractor goes to the hardware store, they're going to pay sales tax when they buy wood, when they buy sand or plumbing material, whatever they need for reconstruction, they have to pay sales tax. That is new tax revenues that the local government is going to receive. So the higher the reconstruction, the higher will be the impact on tax revenues on the local treasury. What is the problem with this is that the fiscal plan is not using those new tax revenues that are coming as an indirect effect of the reconstruction. They are not using that money to help displaced families, to help families that didn't receive aid from FEMA. There are thousands of families in Puerto Rico that didn't receive aid from FEMA. They are not using those new tax revenues to help these families. They are using those new tax revenues to pay more debt. And you're going to see it. Actually, let me jump there. This line here, the gray line here, is the fiscal payments, I mean the debt payments that both the Fiscal Control Board and the local government said before Hurricane Maria in March 2017. Both of they say to the market and to the world, this is the debt payment that Puerto Rico is able to pay, between 600 millions and $1 billion. We cannot pay more than that. On average, it's about 800 millions of dollars per year. They said the whole government of Puerto Rico is able to pay that. That was before Hurricane Maria. After Hurricane Maria, they're saying, no, we can pay actually the double. We can pay about 1,800 of dollars every year in debt. So in that sense, and that's the red line, the red line is the post-Maria fiscal plan that was certified in 2018. The post-Maria fiscal plan doubled debt payment. If you, and in that sense, you can argue that Hurricane Maria or the reconstruction of Hurricane Maria bail out bondholders, because that was the big item that increased after Hurricane Maria. The fourth negative point, in my opinion, of the fiscal plan that was certified, the last one, is that they are not using, we are not paying debt of the central government since PROMESA was enacted in 2016. So that money that used to go to bondholders, the government is saving that, the Fiscal Control Board is saving that in a bank account. And before COVID-19, the Fiscal Control Board said to the bondholders of the central government, here you go, you're gonna have a down payment of $3.8 billion. You're gonna have that down payment and I'm going to pay you this amount of money for the next 20 years. So I have argued a lot in the media, say, use that almost $4 billion that you propose for down payment, use that money as a stimulus package to help the local economy. And that's actually the trend, the international trend. The G20 said about 3 months ago, say to developing countries, you know what, the money that you have to pay my debt, don't pay me that for now and use that money to stimulate your economy, because at the end, if your economy doesn't collapse, you're going to be able to resume your debt payments. But if your economies collapse because of COVID-19, at the end, creditor to the local economy. The fifth point is that the plan does not consider the impact of wrong policy decisions. Take the case of the local treasury that gave priorities in the stimulus package, the stimulus check, sorry, that's the $1,200 that most of the individuals in the States already receive it. In Puerto Rico, there are still individuals that have not received the $1,200. The local treasury gave priorities to those that filed earlier the income tax of 2019. So if you, and who are the people that file like in January their income taxes? Those are the ones that don't have a liquidity problem, and they asked the government to take more money out of their check, so at the end of the year they can receive a higher tax credit. So if you do that, you don't have a liquidity problem. You have priority for the stimulus check. And I said a lot publicly, I argue a lot against that policy. I say the local treasury should give priority to the unemployed, especially the forced unemployed that were affected by the lockdown. So that's a wrong policy, and that is going to have an impact on the economy as a whole. Also, the inefficiency associated to the unemployment insurance program that many people receive, those benefits that they pay every year, they receive those benefits late, and as a result, the economy collapsed more. The plan also does not consider risk related to Act 154. This Act 154 of 2012 increase taxes to about 10 multinational corporations in Puerto Rico, especially manufacturing corporations in Puerto Rico. These 10 corporations pay almost $2 billion every year, and that's about 20% of the government budget, of the central government budget. What is the problem with this act? That these corporations are paying those taxes in Puerto Rico because the federal treasury is giving a tax credit. They say, whatever you pay in Puerto Rico, I'm going to give you a tax credit in your federal taxes. But they say that it's not going to be forever. And actually, they're saying that they're going to remove that pretty soon. But the fiscal plan is assuming they're going to receive that income for many, many years. The fiscal plan that was certified by the board is arguing or talking about an energy reform, but doesn't include solar energy. And for me and for many people in Puerto Rico, that's not right, because our abundant resource in Puerto Rico is not natural gas, it's not oil, it's actually solar energy. They also include some superficial recommendations for the K-12 education. And that superficial recommendation includes, for instance, having, they are not talking about reopening many of the schools that were closed in the island. They closed about 34% of the schools in 3 years, because a fiscal plan back then includes closing schools in Puerto Rico. They are not talking about reopening schools or improving academic achievement. They are just recommending more technology devices and other kind of things that are important, but are not going to create a huge impact in the education of Puerto Rico. And at the end, those are more or less my the negative side that I see in this plan. As I said earlier, the most important thing in this plan are the exhibit that discuss the debt service, or the money that Puerto Ricans we have to pay to bondholders. So the local government said, after that fabulous reconstruction, and assuming that those market reforms are going to have a very nice effect on the economy, assuming that we are very optimistic, even with that optimism, we are still going to have a fiscal deficit, and that's the purple line here that you're seeing, or the purple boxes that you're observing here. And that negative are the amount of the fiscal deficit that you're going to have every year. On the other hand, the Fiscal Control Board, in their own fiscal plan, they say, yes, we are going to have, and these are these parentheses here that said net gap, and you have those parentheses are negative figures. They're saying, yes, we're going to have in fiscal year 2025 a fiscal deficit of about $1 billion. Is a smaller fiscal deficit than the one that the local government is predicting, that is 1.4 billion, but it still is a fiscal deficit. And they say we're going to continue in fiscal deficit for many decades to come. Even in 2045, we're going to still have a fiscal deficit if we continue with the same debt agreement of the past. And for me, this is a milestone because in the first fiscal plan, and not the first, the second fiscal plan after Hurricane Maria, they were very optimistic about the debt capacity of Puerto Rico. You may ask me for what are my alternatives, or what do I propose for the government of Puerto Rico. First of all, I will propose taxing internet purchases. There are many ways that you can do that. For instance, you can give a small incentive to internet companies, and that's actually what many stores are doing right now. Every time that you pay with a credit card, the Visa or MasterCard, they don't charge you as a customer, they don't charge you anything, but they do charge the store about 1%, 2%, 3% of commission. The local government can say to these internet companies, I'm going to give you this commission if you collect these taxes for me. Some people say, what? That's not fair. How are you going to tax people? The problem here is that these internet companies don't create a single job in Puerto Rico, except for the UPS guy that comes once in a while to every neighborhood in Puerto Rico. But it's competing with local stores that do provide jobs to the economy of Puerto Rico, and that's an unfair competition. If you buy locally, you have to pay taxes. If you buy through the internet, you don't pay taxes. We also have a problem here with mega stores that are transferring incomes, and that's what we call transfer pricing. It's a technicality, but it's just a trick, an accounting trick that they have so that they transfer incomes that they generate in Puerto Rico to a fiscal paradise abroad, and or a tax haven abroad. And in that sense, they are not paying their fair amount of taxes in Puerto Rico. We need to reappraise properties in Puerto Rico and cap exemptions. You can have here in Puerto Rico houses that are very big, very fabulous, very nice, but they don't pay taxes. And right now they are going to do something related to that. And the department that is working with that, we call it here in Puerto Rico CREAM, and they just certify their own fiscal plan. We need to ban sales of tax credits. So in Puerto Rico, if you are, for instance, a contractor and you receive a tax credit because you were renovating some houses in very specific neighborhoods, you receive a tax credit. Sometimes the government gives you so much tax credits that at the end of the day, you don't have to pay anything. But those tax credits that you have and you didn't use, you can sell it. You can sell it to a bank, you can sell it to an insurance company. And that's what I put here, that distort markets, because the policymaker didn't want banks or insurance company to have a tax credit. But if you let tax credits to be sold in Puerto Rico, that is what is going to happen. At the end of the day, that tax credit can get to the wrong hands. We need to put higher taxes to luxuries and to concerts in Puerto Rico. We have a very regressive taxation. The sales tax in Puerto Rico is 11.5%, which is, of course, the highest when you compare that to the States. So what I have argued in the past is that we have to move to a progressive, with that 11.5 should be decreased, and we have to tax other services and other luxury goods to look for neutrality in tax revenues. Finally, I will argue for reengineering instead of austerity. If we have better government services, you can also get some savings out of those renovated essential services. If we remove insurance companies from the public health plan and we establish in Puerto Rico a single payer, we can save more than $100 million. And while we actually improve potentially improve essential services in Puerto Rico. We need to raise taxes to participants in Act 20 and Act 22 of 2012. Act 22, some of you have heard of it. If you are a millionaire and you live in the US and you move to Puerto Rico, you don't pay here taxes on your on the income that you generate out of dividends and what we call passive income. But if you are in Puerto Rico and you receive rents, you do have to pay taxes. So I think we need to reform Act 22 of 2012. What I will argue that are the structural reforms that we need in Puerto Rico are not necessarily market reforms. What we need is to repeal the Jones Act that is isolating the economy of Puerto Rico from the globalization. The Jones Act mandates that any person or any good that is going to be transported between the States and Puerto Rico have to be in a US airplane or in a US vessel. And the US vessels in particular are the most expensive in the whole world. So we need to get rid of that barrier to our economic development. In the case of PREPA, which is a Puerto Rico Energy Public Authority, we need no hurdles for those consumers that want to move or become prosumers, which are those households that want to generate their own energy. If we follow the economic theory, that's actually what we're going to find. More with that we should make more use of our abundant resource. Lastly, we need to invest more in research and development in our public university. Instead of cutting the budget of the public university, which is almost exclusively doing research in Puerto Rico, private university, most of the private universities are teaching college, are not research institutions. If we want to develop a knowledge economy and we want to bring more pharmaceutical to Puerto Rico, and that's been discussed in Congress right now, we need also to increase the investment in research and development. So instead of cutting the budget, I will argue to change the way that the public university receive money from the central government and give more incentive to do research and development. So thank you for your patience, and I'm happy to answer the questions that you may have.